From The Australian, here's what's on the front. I'm Claire Harvey. It's Tuesday, December 2, 2025. United Nations cops on the ground in the Pacific Islands. That's the dream Australia's pushing for when it hosts the UN Chiefs of Police Summit in New York next year. Australian Federal Police Commissioner Chrissy Barrett will lead the push for a regional force to match China's power plays in the region and surging transnational crime. That story's live now at theaustralian.com.au. A car crash, an allegedly drunk driver, and two families devastated. That's a story we're all used to. But our national crime correspondent David Murray has been digging into a case that has thrown up all sorts of complexities and implications. In this matter, the allegedly drunk driver is the mother of a superstar footballer. She was also, according to her lawyers, living in her own world of grief-induced fantasy, where a dead child had come back to life. Now her defence team wants the case treated not as dangerous driving or manslaughter, but a mental health episode. That's today's story. David Murray is the Australian's national crime correspondent. Dave, you're the national crime correspondent at a big national broadsheet. You don't often report on car crashes. But there was a car crash in Queensland in 2022 that's taken on much greater significance than one might have thought at the time. Tell me what happened in that car crash.
This was a particularly horrific crash in the Gold Coast hinterland. A family was travelling on a shopping trip when another car crossed onto the wrong side of the road, according to police, and struck them head on. And three people in that car died. Susan Zimmer, who was 7 years old, Steffanie, her daughter, who was 35, and Dr. Chris Fawcett, that's Susan's partner, and he was 79. This became a national story because the driver of the other vehicle, of the black Mercedes, was Joan Taufua, the mother of the Brisbane Broncos star prop, Payne Haas.
Joan Taufua is a mother of 10 who lived in a multi-million-dollar property on the Gold Coast. She drove a Mercedes. She was immensely proud of her superstar footballer son. But according to papers filed in court, Joan Taufua was deeply troubled. She had spent years caring for one of her children, Chase, who was catastrophically injured in a car crash as a baby. He was just 5 months old. His spinal cord was severed and he was living with quadriplegia, reliant on ventilation and only able to move in a wheelchair. In 2020, Chase died, and that plunged Joan into deep grief, according to her lawyers. The lawyers say that in the lead-up to the December 2022 car crash, she was spending hours lost in a dream world, wandering her neighbourhood, imagining she was pushing Chase in his wheelchair.
Her legal team says that evidence has emerged that just prior to this accident, she believes she was communicating with her deceased son. There's apparently text messages which go to her saying that she was taking him out for walks in his wheelchair. And of course, none of that could have been possible as he died more than a couple of years before this accident. And that is now leading the defence to say that there is a possible mental health defence and insanity defence, and to have the case referred to the mental health court in Queensland.
You've reported that the defence's case is going to be that Joan Taufua was not of sound mind when she crashed into the other family. She had a moderately high blood alcohol reading. What significance does that have when it comes to the court considering whether or not it will hear a case that she was of unsound mind?
Yeah, lawyers who work in the mental health court in Queensland tell me that it definitely will be significant. It will be part of the case. It's a factor. She's been charged with mid-range drink driving, and that means that she was between 0.1 and 0.15, so 2 to 3 times the legal limit. And in assessing whether Joan Taufua was of sound mind at the time of the accident, if the mental health court assesses that intoxication played any role in her, inability to understand right from wrong, in her unsoundness of mind, they can't then proceed with this case as an unsound mind case, as an insanity defence, and it will be referred back to the Supreme Court to be dealt with as a criminal case. So that's one factor. The other part of it is that the Mental Health Court is looking at this case because of a referral from the defence, and what that usually means is that the defence has a psychiatric report which says that the person charged was of unsound mind, or potentially was, but the Mental Health Court then can appoint its own experts to assess the person. So they will assess Joan Taufua. If they've got a different opinion, if there's a contest of opinion, then that will then go to a contested hearing where factors such as intoxication come into it, and the court can decide that there is no unsoundness of mind defence there and refer it back to the Supreme Court for trial. The charges here are very serious. There's 3 counts of manslaughter. Each of those have a maximum sentence of life imprisonment. As well as that, she's been charged with the drink driving offence, with evading police, unlicensed driving and dangerous driving. So they are very high stakes.
She was clearly living through a really difficult kind of grief when this accident happened, Joan Taufua. There are some photos that accompany your story on theaustralian.com.au, Dave, that show the memorial or mausoleum the family had built for their late son, Chase. Can you just describe that for me?
This was quite remarkable. When these pictures first emerged, they were published on the front page of newspapers around the country a few years back, and that was with the permission of the family. The family had gained the authority from the local council to bring Chase's body to their house in accordance with Samoan culture. So they had done that, and he has a special mausoleum that's been constructed. It's quite elaborate. It's based partly on Chase's love of all things Egyptian, and his body is in a gold coffin within that mausoleum, and it overlooks the swimming pool, the family home. It's essentially made him a permanent part of family life.
So, Dave, on the surface, this would look to be a fairly sort of simple matter. Someone who is intoxicated is involved in a serious crash. Very serious charges are laid relating to both the crash and to her level of intoxication. If the courts do allow her to proceed with a mental health defence, does that have any significance beyond this actual matter?
Well, I think it's probably too early to say whether this case will have knock-on effects for other cases. The Mental Health Court is a very busy court. I think last financial year there were 250 cases. That was a spike, about 50 more cases than they usually get. The court is dealing with backlogs. It's sitting more often. It's basically doing everything possible to speed things up, because I'm told that this process could take at least a year. We'll just have to wait and see. We will get to see what happens in that mental health court to see what the ramifications are. I mean, the interesting thing about this is that it's now 3 years since this crash, and courts became quite frustrated across that time about why it was taking so long, particularly to get a psychiatric assessment. One magistrate said, you're presumed to have sanity unless shown otherwise. But now the defence have these text messages. I think that is probably the change that has led to the defence taking this to the mental health court. They've actually gone and it's taken some time to do this, but they've recovered material apparently from Strava, which is an exercise tracking app that helps corroborate her meandering walks, as she said, that she was having with her deceased son. That's part of the reason for the delay.
Yeah, and that delay has no doubt caused distress to the grieving family of the victims in this car crash. Chris Fawcett was a skin cancer specialist. He was 79. His partner was Susan Zimmer, an accountant, and Susan's daughter, Steffanie, who was 35. Those families, as well as dealing with their grief at the loss of their relatives, are also embroiled in their own dispute, aren't they? Yeah,
look, I mean, this is, again, part of the knock-on effects of a terrible crash like this. No one expects something like this to happen, and families aren't prepared. In this case, 4 of Chris Fawcett's children from previous marriages have gone to the District Court in Queensland and asked for provision from Susan Zimmer's estate. That has involved taking Susan Zimmer's only surviving daughter from a previous marriage to court and arguing the case. From reading those court documents, there appears to have been, quite some tension there over this. You've got a lot of people who are grieving the loss of their loved ones, and they're trying to sort out what's left behind. In this case, as you said, Dr. Fawcett was a skin cancer specialist, and his children say they believe that due to his risky profession that most of his assets would actually be in Susan Zimmer's name. And so now they're going through the process of trying to work out, okay, how do we split this estate between the surviving family members? I mean, the toll on these family members is quite significant. Two of the children of Chris Fawcett and also Susan Zimmer's daughter have taken Joan, Taufua and the insurer Limited to court seeking damages for their mental, suffering, their pain, their losses, financial losses as a result of this. They're multi-million-dollar cases that are being also fought by the insurer, who says that those claims are excessive.
Coming up, the very different legal drama involving the father of Payne Haas. Payne Haas is someone who's, of course, known to rugby league fans as a phenomenal player, an extremely talented individual. But he's got a tragic backstory, hasn't he? His father is caught up in trouble with the police. Let's just briefly recap what's going on with Payne Haas's father.
Payne Haas's father, Gregor, is currently locked up in the Philippines. His release is pending. He was arrested as part of a drugs investigation, accused of involvement in drug smuggling in Indonesia. He's had a couple of wins lately. Of course, the stakes there are extremely high. Indonesia has the death penalty when it comes to drug importations. They've apparently taken that off the table as far as Gregor goes. But yes, he has had some wins. The Court of Appeals in the Philippines have only this month said that he should be released. The Interpol, the International Policing Agency, has withdrawn a red notice, and so he's currently pending release, waiting for that to happen, and we'll see what happens there. Meanwhile, Payne's mother, Joan Taufua, is currently in custody as well, and so what that has meant is that Payne has actually stepped up and he has taken on some of the parenting roles for his younger siblings, his brothers. He's looking after them while he's raising his own young family.
You cover courts and crime all the time, Dave. What does this case tell you about maybe why things take so long to be resolved these days?
Yeah, I mean, they say justice delayed is justice denied, and it's always unfortunate when you see cases that stretched out. Recently, we had another case in Queensland that was 10 years before it eventually was thrown out. I mean, that's just too long. The courts recognise that. They want to expedite cases as much as they can, but, while keeping it fair for the defence, for the victims, for everyone involved. It is very frustrating. I think it extends the pain of everyone involved when these matters can't be resolved quickly. From what I can see, the courts in this case have been trying to make it go ahead to progress quicker than it has. Unfortunately, this process will now, by the looks of it, take another whole year. You can only hope that the courts continue to get the resources and then put those resources into turning these cases around as quickly as they possibly can for everyone involved.
David Murray is the Australian's national crime correspondent. You can read this story now at theaustralian.com.au.